Hello, everyone. Sorry I'm late. I was on another live stream. I was on John Malin's live stream showcase, and I was promoting the Ghetto Dragon. 30 hours left, and he gave me some pretty sound advice in terms of extending the campaign to an extra 30 days, which I didn't consider at in the beginning, but now since he pretty much told me that it's fine, that it'll probably help me out in the long run, then I might actually think about of doing that. So I apologize for those who were waiting for the show to begin. I hope you guys can still join me. I will be on for another hour. I'm going to have a guest, and he's on right now. So I'm going to have him on in a minute. But I just wanted to let you guys know that the Ghetto Dragon No Good Deed Book 1 has met its goal, and we are well over 1,175, which is fantastic. I gotta say, I'm very grateful and humbled at the fact that we're able to get. I was able to reach this number to begin with, considering that I am, pretty much an unknown, a relative unknown. I really didn't have anything going for me before. And so the fact that I was able to build up a Twitter base and get myself up and about and pretty much put myself out there and see if people like or want to read a martial arts comic book, 59 backers, that pretty much indicates of the hard work that I put in to make sure, not to make sure, but that tells me that 59 people are looking forward to reading a martial arts comic book, which is a great sign for me for future projects, because the Ghetto Dragon I hope to make and expand as far as I can. So I just want to say thank you for those who are watching now, who will watch after the fact. I apologize for starting really late. I know I was supposed to start about an hour ago with my guest, and I know some of you may have I may have peeved some of you guys. So I apologize for that sincerely, and I hope to make it up for you soon. So my guest that I have tonight is an individual who is hard at work to promote indie projects. And I have to give him respect for this because not many people are doing that. Not many people are going about supporting indie comics. People still read and buy mainstream comics, and Image Comics, although considered to be independent, they're considered to be mainstream in my opinion now. But my guest, his name is Jam Creates. He is the creator and producer of an online comic book zine, I like to call them zines, called Indie Comics Underground. And he goes around and he finds the indie creators that are looking for exposure, and he finds them, he interviews them, he showcases their work. And I can't help but just appreciate the passion he has to spread the good word of indie comics, because we need it now more than ever, considering the fact that the shift is occurring. Now people are starting to look for other stuff that's outside the mainstream and looking for it in the indie scene, because let's face it, a lot of the talent that has been overlooked by the big two, as well as Dark Horse and Image Comics and other small publishers that are well known in the industry. Now they are flourishing thanks to crowdfunding platforms like Kickstarter and Indiegogo. And so please welcome Jam Creates. Jam, what's up, buddy?
Hey, how you doing?
Good, man. How you doing? I'm sorry for the late start, man. I really was not expecting it to take that long when I was at Malin's channel.
Nah, it's all good. It's all good. I know how that goes. Listen, like I said to you, a chance to be on John's stream is a great chance to get in front of a lot of eyeballs. So I certainly can't be mad about you going and hanging in there. And then obviously,
Thanks,
once you're
man.
in, you got to stay there.
Yeah, right. Exactly. I didn't want to I gotta go, guys. See ya. I'm my own show to go to. But thanks for sticking by, man. Thanks for still coming on the show, because I'm eager to talk to you about the things you do, the great things you do. I'm curious to know um, what made you, what prompted you to want to do what you do. What was it what was the driving force, I guess, for you to create Comics Underground, comics, indie comics underground.
You got
Excuse me.
it. So you can always just call it ICU. It's fine.
I see you. There you go.
It actually, I would say what started it really is one, I love comics. I always have, and I'm sure I always will. I mean, I'm 45 years old, so if I haven't stopped loving them by now, I don't think I'm going to stop anytime soon.
Nice.
And for me, it was really about, I had dropped out of reading mainstream comics. I really got tired of the stuff that Marvel was doing. I was always more of a Marvel than a DC guy throughout my life, and
Okay.
I just got tired of what they were doing and what I was seeing from them. And then all of a sudden, like, there was this explosion of people talking about the same things I was thinking that I was seeing from these comics from the mainstream. And I've always had fun, when I used to go to the store, like way back in the day, especially when the industry was huge. I used to love going to the store and just, I would pick up the stuff I knew I was going to get. Like, I was always going to read Amazing Spider-Man, or I was always going to pick up my X-Men books, or, but then I would also, there was always all this like explosion in the 90s of the late 80s and the early 90s of these crazy indie comics that were just like, there were all these things that you just looked at, you're like, I never even heard of this, but this looks ridiculous. I need to pick this up. And so I would. And so when I saw other people seeing the same things that I was seeing in the mainstream and really jumping out into indie and really just this explosion with, like with the start of Comicsgate and everything else, and just seeing like the videos that your boy Zach was doing and everything else. And for me, it was only natural. I feel like some people are still trying to fight that fight of trying to fix the mainstream.
Right.
And for me, that's just not worth it. Not anymore. I feel like,
agreed.
I feel like there was a time when maybe that was worth trying to do, but we're past that point now.
Yeah, well, it did. I remember, I'm not 45, but I'm close to your age range, so I know exactly what you're talking about, and I know exactly what you're referring to. There was a point where Marvel Comics was, in the mid 90s, was complete trash. Toy Fair had bought them, and Toy Fair, I guess they're kind of like a 1 foot in, 1 foot out type of owner, where they're like, yeah, do whatever you want. We just want to make toys. We just want to make toys based on your characters. That's where we want to make the money at. So you guys can do whatever you want, just so as long as we can make toys with your characters, which is why we bought you in the first place. And for a while there, Marvel was kind of stale, in my opinion, because I was more of a DC guy growing up.
Okay.
And it wasn't until Joe Quesada, which is kind of ironic considering what kind of editor, what kind of guy he is now. But back then, it was Joe Quesada and Jimmy Palmiotti who got together, and they went to Marvel and they said, "Hey, we got this idea for an imprint called Marvel Knights. We have this cool idea for Daredevil, and we want to have Kevin Smith write it. Are you on board?" And they said yes, because at the time, as you know, Kevin Smith was, at the peak of his career at that time. So when they got him to write Daredevil and have Joe Quesada and Jimmy Palmiotti draw and ink the book, it blew up. Marvel Knights blew up. Like I distinctly remember Wizard magazine, when I went to the comic book shops, everyone was talking about Daredevil, Kevin Smith's Daredevil, because it was refreshing, I guess, for a lot of readers who did grow up reading Marvels in the 80s, and for them to kind of bring Daredevil back to its roots of the dark, gritty, the Frank Miller Daredevil, essentially. And it blew up. And then next thing you know, they have Punisher with Garth Ennis and Steve Dillon, which was I think it was a big score, because it was like they just came off Preacher at Vertigo, and to bring him to Marvel to draw Punisher, that was another. I remember that book sold. I went to my shop. Yeah. I wanted to get that first issue. Oh, sorry, we're sold out. Damn. Like, are you going to get another one? Oh, maybe. I don't know. I'm not sure. You would have to check out other stores to see if they have copies. So I would have to drive. Well, actually, not at the time. I didn't drive. I would have my poor dad, drive me to other stores, so I could find this issue. And I never found it until a couple of years later when I actually found it in a comic shop, because I guess you know how it goes, right? Some people sell the collections because
Oh yeah,
they gotta, whatever, they gotta get rid of it or whatever. So I got lucky and I got that issue, but that was when it took off for Marvel. That's when I became both a DC Marvel guy, but I became more of a Marvel guy after that, because that's Joe Quesada became editor-in-chief. And then once he became editor-in-chief, that's when, the Ultimate line came out. That's when,
right.
all he was able to lure all this talent to Marvel, and that's when you had the exclusive deals, right? The golden age of
Right.
creators being able to make all this money because they were exclusive. Oh, I'm only exclusive to Marvel, so I'm only doing Marvel books. And then DC caught on and did the same thing. And that's when that became, like, for me anyway, late 90s up until, I want to say, what, mid 2000s, maybe 2000, what, 8, 9, I want to say.
Yeah.
Yeah, where it was like just top notch work. It was unbelievable work.
It's funny because I feel like with that whole thing, like, you can see, like, it's really funny because it's almost like it's just a cliche at this point, but it really is true. You get what you pay for, and they were paying for those guys.
Yeah.
They were paying top dollar for top creators.
Yeah.
And one of the big things that happened with, before that, prior to that, obviously was the whole Image thing.
Yes.
When the guys left to form Image, those
Right.
guys were all just complete, I mean, they were superstars at that point.
Yeah.
I mean, I will never forget, like, people I didn't even know liked comics knew who those guys were, which was crazy to me. I mean, you had the, of course, the Rob Liefeld doing the jeans commercial, but like,
Right.
but like, it was just so crazy to me. Like, there's people, like, it was just so huge. And I think Marvel realized, like, you got to pay these top guys because their stuff is selling, and
Yeah.
you just have to do it. And then you see now where they're obviously not paying, and that's what you're getting.
Yeah.
You're getting the quality that you get when you don't pay.
Right.
Like,
Yeah, no, absolutely. You're absolutely right. The moment Disney bought Marvel, I was like, it's over. It's done. Maybe not right away,
uh-huh.
but it's over. Like, I knew right
Well,
from the get-go.
it's really funny because I sometimes I can be a little naive, and I freely admit that. And I am a hopeless optimist. I always have been. And honestly, there's been times when life has beaten the crap out of me, and I've not, it's hard to stay optimistic, but I just do. It's just my nature. So, it is what it is. But when Disney bought Marvel, I mean, the one thing about that was Marvel was in bankruptcy.
Yeah.
There was, it was a question of whether they were even going to still be around. And their licensing was spread out all over the planet to half a dozen different companies and everything
Right.
else. And the one thing I thought was, if Disney, and at the time when because when Disney bought them, at the time they bought them, I guess I just didn't see enough into it, or whatever it was at the time. But I felt like, Disney is known for telling stories. They're storytellers. That's what they do.
Right.
That's what they always had done. So I thought, this could be a good thing for Marvel. And unfortunately, I also thought the same thing when they bought Star Wars. But
Yeah,
which
we all
is
know
good.
how that worked out.
Yeah, exactly. The less said about that, the better at this point.
Yeah.
But
Right.
but it's funny because I really thought, maybe this could be a good thing. But the other thing is I was also a very big video game fan for a long time.
Mm.
And I was always a fan, not just of the games themselves, but I was kind of a fan of the industry as well. So I would study the industry, and I knew all the companies. I knew who was running what company, and the decisions they were making and all that kind of stuff. And I knew Disney's history when it came to video games. And if you know anything about Disney's history as a company when it comes to video games, Disney used to license out their characters, their movie properties, and everything else to all these different companies to make the games for them. And they would
Right.
get the license fees, and the companies would make the games, and yada yada. The typical arrangement that you're used to. Then at one point, Disney decided, you know what? We're licensing out our properties. Why don't we just make our own games? And so they built up a huge game division. They spent millions, probably trillions of dollars on a games division, hiring, building studios, the whole nine yards. They made a few games. They made a handful of games, and their games actually were pretty good games. And the funny thing is everybody was looking at it and they're like, wow, they're doing this and it's great, and they're hiring people and they're building and they're making games that are good games. The fans are enjoying the games and everything else. And then all of a sudden, just out of the blue, Disney was like, yeah, we're shutting down Disney Game Studios.
Oh man.
And it was like, wait, what?
Man, that's crazy.
Like, what do you, because they looked at the numbers and said, we're spending all this money. Why don't we just go back to the old model of licensing stuff out? And then that's what they did. And that's what they're doing now again, is they're just licensing stuff out again. So that's why I just kept waiting for them to do the same thing with Marvel, to be honest.
Well, I mean, they saw. Well, here's the rumored story. I don't know if it's true. This was told to me, but I don't know if this is the reality or not. But apparently, the story goes that a Disney executive took his child, I think it was his son, to a San Diego Comic-Con, and it was the first time he had ever gone, because his son was like, Dad, take me to the San Diego Comic-Con, and he's like, what's that? And he's like, oh, well, it's this great place where people who collect comic books go and buy stuff and meet people, and people dress up. And I was like, oh, okay. So he took him, and apparently he walked in the main hall, where everything's busy, people are walking, checking out tables, and he was just mesmerized, going, what? I guess he never knew it existed. That was the story that was told to me. And he saw, oh my God, they actually have some more characters selling that. No, I'm not their characters, but like, they actually have characters from these books being sold by artists for extra cash. People are dressing up like the characters. What is this place? What's happening? And then I guess he went back to the board and said, hey, we need to tap this market. So essentially what he saw was a big market that was untapped, and realized we need to tap this market. We have to. And so when they bought Marvel, I knew precisely what they're going to do. They were going to make the movies, because they knew the market was there. And of course, the success of Spider-Man was also an indicator that, Spider-Man, considering that they beat the Star Wars Episode 1 numbers, and I knew it was going to beat. I remember I told my friend this at the time, because he told me, like, no, Star Wars is going to beat Spider-Man, because there's a bigger Star Wars fan base. And I'm like, nah, man, you have to remember the adults who watched the cartoons in the 60s. You have to remember the live television show of the 70s. You have to remember the cartoon of the 90s. Nah, man, I think Spider-Man, the Tobey Maguire first Spider-Man, with Sam Raimi directing, I said, that's going to beat Star Wars. And sure enough, it did, because, it's Spider-Man, man. Like, well, that's the first movie. Like, it was the make or break, and it ended up being a success. And of course, when Iron Man became even the bigger success, I think that's when Disney was like, we need to swoop in and get this before we lose out. And
I thought, the one thing when it came to the movies, what I thought was really funny when because Disney bought Marvel, and then they had this issue of, like I said, Marvel's characters, the rights were scattered to the winds, all over the place. And so it was like they came in and like somebody in a board meeting was like, all right, so here we go. We got Marvel. We got all these characters. Which one are we going to do first? X-Men? No, we can't do that one. All right. Spider-Man. Let's do Spider-Man. Everybody loves Spider-Man. No, we can't do that one either. All right. I don't know. What's another one? Fantastic Four? Nope, we can't do that one either.
I can imagine. Oh my God, hair pulling in that meeting.
Like, they must have been losing their minds. And it was funny, because then they eventually settled on, Iron Man, and then eventually into the Avengers. And we all know how that went. But what was funny to me, being a longtime comic book fan, and other people will tell you the same thing, like when they first announced, like, oh, the big initiative is going to start with Iron Man, to me, I was like, all right. It's Iron Man. He's like a C tier character at that point. You know what I mean? Like, he really was. Like, I know it's hard to imagine that now for a lot of people.
Yeah.
But he really was. He was not the big, and honestly, you have to give a lot of that credit to Robert Downey Jr.
Yeah,
Like,
no, absolutely.
yeah,
You're right. You're absolutely right about that. Absolutely.
because that guy is just charisma in human
Yeah.
form, and it just without him. I mean, if it was anybody else playing that role, I don't know if it has the same success. Honestly,
No, I don't think so either. Robert Downey Jr. was at the right place at the right time for
yes,
that film,
absolutely.
and John Favreau, I can't ever pronounce his last name.
Jon Favreau, yeah,
Yeah, John Favreau. Thank you. He was the perfect choice because you could tell, especially when I watched the trailer. When I watched the trailer, I was like, "Oh, this guy, he loves this character. Like you could tell
yes,
he loved him, and he made sure to make him cool when he got on the project." And you have to give credit to John Favreau as well because he really did. He made Iron Man cool because I was in the same boat you were. I was like, Iron Man, really? Okay, a drunk guy? Okay, all right, we'll see how that works. We'll see how that works out. And when they casted Robert Downey Jr., I was like, okay, I could see that because I was already a huge Robert Downey Jr. fan. So
sure,
I looked forward to it. I was all right, cool. I was happy for him too because I know he had that drug problem.
right.
So I was kind of rooting for him. I was like, I hope he makes it because he is really a great actor. Like he is one of my favorite actors. So when I watched that movie and by the end of it, I was like, that's it. They got it. They got Iron Man.
Oh,
They
absolutely.
made him into a cool character. And now Iron Man comic books are going to sell like hotcakes. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened. Iron Man became once again the forefront character of the Marvel comic book universe anyway, for a while up
Oh, yeah.
until, Thor and then Captain America and
Right,
all those
Captain
movies started
America
coming
and everybody
afterwards.
else. Yeah, it's funny because I mean, honestly, if you would have gone to anywhere, it doesn't matter. You go to your family at Thanksgiving or something, before the Marvel Cinematic Universe happened, and you would have asked people, to name some Marvel superheroes. I mean, aside from
Yeah.
the people who are going to say like, oh, Batman,
Yeah.
like, but you're going to get people. You would probably people would say Spider-Man.
Right.
Maybe they would name Captain America. Um, but by the time I doubt your grandma knew who Iron Man was
Right.
before
Yeah.
those
No
movies
way.
came out.
No way.
Like,
No way. If you knew all the superheroes' names before the Iron Man movie, or even before the Spider-Man movie came out, you were considered a nerd. Like
oh,
that's straight up.
absolutely,
Like you were a nerd. You're a nerd, dude. Like I can't believe you know all that stuff. And
absolutely.
and now everyone who's everyone, loves, well, not the comics, which is a good segue to what we need to talk about. But
Yes.
um uh they love the movies, which is fine, but it didn't do the comic book industry any service as
No.
I had hoped it would do, because that was my main gripe when Hollywood took over the San Diego Comic Con anyway. They have no love for the comics. They claim to do, they pretend they do, but I
Right.
know deep down they don't. They really don't give a shit about
No,
that.
they don't.
And so I think that's the main reason why there's been such a decline in the comics, because all those fans that flocked to the films didn't go into the comic book stores because they were not wised up to it.
No. I mean, if you
And I
really think, if you really, I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, it's
Um,
fine.
if you really think about it, when those movies came out, what those fans, the people who became fans of the
Hmm.
characters due to the movies, what they bought was T-shirts,
Yeah,
Funko Pops, merch. That's what they did. They bought
yeah,
merch. They didn't buy comics because in order to buy comics, they would have to, one, know where their comic book store is.
right, right,
Two,
yeah,
go to the comic book store, go into the comic book store, and three, figure out what comic to buy.
yeah, right,
And
exactly,
and that was a
exactly.
lot of hurdles. That was a lot of hurdles for people to overcome when they could walk into literally any Target, Walmart, or any store,
Right.
and there's half a dozen Avengers
Hmm.
T-shirts on every rack.
I would say probably then you and I, people like you and I, we failed. we failed. We failed them because it should have been up to us to get them to the comic book store. Because I think the moment they would have walked into a comic book store, they would have been hooked the moment they walked in. Because the first story, my first experience in the comic book store, I was 13 years old.
Mhm.
My dad took me and my siblings to the mall to for back to school shopping, and he had to drive to this little street way that led to the parking structure. But on the way there, there's these small storefronts that are outside the mall. And I remember I looked over and I saw posters of Superman, Batman,
Sure.
and Spider-Man. Not the movie posters. These were drawings. These were the
Right.
comic book drawings. And it had been the first time that I ever seen one like that. And I was like, what the hell is that? What is that? Because I recognize the characters, right? I recognize Superman and Batman and Spider-Man because of the cartoon, because of the movies. So I was like, oh, hey, what is this? Oh, I need to go there. But of course, my dad wouldn't have it. So I had to go on my own. And when I walked in, you're right. I had no idea where to start. I had no idea where to go. I had no idea what to buy. But I was hooked. I was like, this is great. This is freaking fantastic. What's that? What's that over there? It was the Pit. It was a huge poster of the Pit. Remember what Daily Known?
Okay. Yep.
So that was like, what's the Pit? That looks gnarly. Holy crap. And then I see over there the huge poster of the Alex Ross Kingdom Come fight between the Superman and Shazam and all those heroes fighting, and it looked realistic. And I was like, what? Oh my god. So I was there for 3 hours just looking and mesmerized at everything. And then eventually I caught on when I saw other people picking up books and looking at them. Okay, this is where the books are at. And I bought a few issues. The first comic book that I ever bought was Superman Forever, when they brought him back from the that terrible remember when they split him to the red and blue energy Superman?
Yes.
So it was right when they brought him back to the classical colors, and it was the Alex Ross cover. I bought that. I still have it to this day. It's a prized possession. I will never get rid of it. It's a heirloom now in my household. But yeah, I think the movie fans of those films, those MCU films, and even DC films, we, the fans, the comic book fans, we should have wised them up. We should have told them, hey, you like this movie? Here, come with me. I'm going to take you someplace and I'm going to show you exactly where that came from. And then if we would have just wised them up, then the stores, I think the industry would have flourished with the movies, in my opinion, if that was the case. But, we didn't do that.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, you know what? I feel like it would really take a concerted effort from everyone involved, the comic book publishers, the comic book stores, the other comic book fans, like you said. It would really need a concerted effort amongst everyone. And honestly, to bring us back around to where we started, that's one of the reasons why I started Indie Comics Underground in the first place, was because, like I said, I had written off the mainstream, but I saw all these other incredible comic books being made, some of them by one person, some of them by teams of people, some of them by pros that you knew, and then others from people that you've never heard of. And to me, it was so exciting. It made me feel like a kid again, honestly, like discovering these new characters and these new worlds, these new stories and everything else.
Yeah.
And I was like, I need to do something to help, like you said, to bring people to the comic book store. Well, I'm not doing that, but I'm trying to bring people to where these books are. And these books happen to be online, whether it be Kickstarter or Indiegogo or even web comics. I know a lot of people kind of write web comics off as like the redheaded stepchild of, of comic book. And honestly, I understand why they have that perception of web comics, because so much of it is in these really, really super niche genres. There's a lot of, really, really specific stuff. I'm trying to not get too detailed into what
right. And that's the great thing about the indie scene, is that there are no rules. To no one tells you, oh, you shouldn't print that. You shouldn't write that. You shouldn't produce that. It's a pretty much like a Wild West of sorts. You can produce whatever you like.
Which is just a matter of
what's that?
I said that's why I think it's so exciting.
Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. Dennis Hopper, God rest his soul. was another favorite actor of mine and director. And I remember they interviewed him about it was a documentary I watched about indie films, films that actually rose from the depths of darkness of that, that was the indie film scene. And I think he said he had the best outlook on it, which I think it's the same rule applies to into the indie comic book scene. And he said, just because it's indie does not make it automatically good. There's a lot of crap indie movies out there.
Absolutely.
And there's some, and he's out, and but on the flip side, there are some gems that do rise, kind of like the cream, right? The cream that rises to the top, they rise to the top because it's quality. And I feel that's how it is right now with the indie comic book scene, is that there's a lot of projects out there, but a lot of it, let's face it, I mean, I hate to say it, but a lot of it is not very good. I'm not gonna say crap, I'm not gonna be mean about it. I'm just gonna say it's not very good because a lot of the time they're still learning. A lot of the time they're still figuring it out. And for the guy in Easy Rider, he would know. Absolutely, ID Crisis. Absolutely. But yeah, eventually you will. I feel that as the years will progress and the shift in viewership and awareness of comic books, eventually does happen, which is already happening. You will see a bunch of books everywhere, but only those that have quality will rise to the top, and the rest will kind of die out. Or, God willing, the ones who are starting now or the ones who are learning will learn from their mistakes and eventually get better with time. Because I have seen, indie books that have potential. If only this artist can, continues to work,
right,
on their craft, in a few years, I can see it, but they're not there yet. But if they keep going, it'll be great. They're going to be great.
And that's kind of one of the cool things about crowdfunding as well, is that, like, you can look at a book and you could say, you can look at a certain campaign and you can look at it and you can see the art and you can say, this is good, or it's okay. And I can see like, oh, this panel, not so much.
Right.
That panel looks awesome. This panel, like, there's definitely potential for sure in this. And then there's this thing that happens a lot of times with crowdfunding is people kind of take ownership in a way of things that someone else is creating, in that. And what I mean by that is you might see something and say, you know what? I can see this is not like the greatest book ever written. I can tell it's not going to be the best comic I've ever read, but it might be all right. But it might be all right. And the concept is cool. And I can see there's some potential and some talent there building. So I'm going to back it. And I'm going to help, because if this guy gets funded and his book gets funded and he gets to make this book, there is no doubt in my mind by the time he finishes his book, he will be a multitude of times better than he was when he started. Absolutely. And then when he does his next book, he'll be even better. And I was there from the beginning and I helped that happen. And you see a lot of people feel that way when it comes to crowdfunding, which is why sometimes I see people kind of get a little, for lack of a better term, they get a little butthurt when they see a book that they don't think is as good as their book doing well. And it's just because, you know what, for whatever reason, some people have decided they want to get behind this project. They want to get behind this guy. They want to help. And that's one of the things that led to me doing Indie Comics Underground in the first place, is that, listen, at the beginning, I mean, I've backed a lot of crowdfunded books, and what happened to me is back when the whole pandemic thing started, I actually lost my job. So the funds are, I've got what we used to, I'm Italian, so I can say this. I've got the Italian disease. The funds are low. So before anyone gets offended, I can say that.
Right.
But so what happened, so another thing I always felt was, even if I can't back every single project that I want to back, the least I can do is help spread the word. And I would love to, I would love for Indie Comics Underground to be the place that people come to say, I want to buy something. I want to see what else is out there. I want to back something. let me go check out what's going on here. And that's why most of what I post are interviews with creators, because no one's going to sell the book better than the person who's doing it.
Right.
So I want to let the creator really speak for themselves, because you never know what's going to connect with an audience, in terms of making them want to back someone. I can say whatever I want, but who am I? Like I could say, oh, this book looks awesome. I think it looks really cool. I think you should back it. But what does that really mean in the long run? Like, you have to make the decision for yourself whether you want to back a book or not. I could tell you it looks cool, but that only means so much.
Right.
Which is why I really like to let the creators step forward into the spotlight and let them sell their book to the audience. And I'm just kind of like the conduit for that to happen, to try to get them together. Now I will say, and you may notice, like, if you go to the website, obviously I see you're on the website. I have my own comic that's on there. It was the Indie Comics Underground exclusive. It was a short comic that I did called The Touch. And I did that for a contest. There was the Platform Comics 10K, where you had 7 days to write, draw, and make a comic. So
wow, 7 days.
So,
that's
7 days. So and they and the day it started was when they sent you what your comic had to be about, and they gave you a line of dialogue to use. So it wasn't like you could really start ahead of time. So it was cool, and honestly, it was a lot of fun, and I learned a ton by doing it. And so, the comic listen, it looks like it was rushed, because it was. The last 2 days, I did not sleep. I stayed up for 24 hours trying to finish. Yeah, it was rough, but it was fun. It really was. Like, if you scroll all the way up to the top, you'll see
ICU Comics right here.
Yeah. Like,
okay, here we go.
Like, this is it. If you just click on that, it'll take you to the comic itself. And like you can see, it's not the greatest thing that's ever been done in the history of comics. But I did what I set out to do.
For 7 days, that's pretty impressive still.
I did what I set out to do. I made a comic. I told a story from start to finish, and I got it done. And, so I was very happy with it. So, I'm going to share it, because I just want people to read it if they want to read it. It'll take them 10 minutes to read the whole story. It's, what is it, 7 pages, I think. And that's another reason, honestly, like, to really just, be 100% transparent with everybody. Like I said, I love comics. And part of that means, even when I was a kid, I used to make my own comics. And on my YouTube channel, I do videos about them. I'll show them, like, because I still have them, the comics that I made when I was a kid.
Cool.
Yeah, I still have them. And so what I'll do is I'll do a video where I'll just go through one. And honestly, if you want to hear me laugh, those are the videos to watch, because I go through reading my old comics, and there's some of them that are just so ridiculous. Like, they just make me crack up laughing. But it's fun. And the thing for me is, I feel like, listen, yeah, those comics, in the grand scheme of things, are they very good? No, they're terrible, but they're funny, and I made them. And so who cares? Like, and I feel the same way with this. Like, I don't think this is terrible. But, but at the same time, can I do better than that? Absolutely I can. And you'll see when I show my next one that's going to be coming out. So I am making my own comics as well. And that's part of it. One of the things, and yourself, you've got the YouTube channel, you're trying to build an audience for yourself as well. Everybody's trying to do it. Everybody knows the formula. If you can get yourself some sort of a following, it's going to help you when the time comes that you want to sell your own book. And so eventually, at some point, I probably will do my own crowdfunder. And I'll do my own project, and I'll probably do the whole thing myself. The only thing I might go out to someone else is either possibly for colors, but almost definitely to get the print file ready, because don't know how to do that. So the rest
go
of it,
YouTube. You can always go YouTube.
yeah,
YouTube
oh,
University is what I call.
absolutely. Listen, that's how I learned how to do a bunch of my stuff. Like for example, the stuff that you're looking at here, everything I did, I drew by hand on paper. It was pencil and paper, and then I inked it on paper, and then I scanned it, and then I colored it digitally, and then I lettered it digitally and all that.
Okay.
And that was honestly, that was all stuff I had never done before. Especially the lettering. I had never done that before.
Oh, that must have been rough then.
So yeah, well, and honestly, that was the thing. I wanted to learn how to do it. I'm not afraid to learn stuff. I'm not afraid to get my hands dirty. I'm not afraid to really dig in and figure some stuff out. I worked for about 15, probably about 12, 15 years. I worked in production, like video production.
Oh,
And
nice. Okay.
and so I worked for, a couple of local TV stations, a couple of magazines, website or two, and I did a lot of video, like a lot of video. And so like, I went to school for it, but honestly, most of what I learned was just by doing stuff myself. So
That's the best way. That's the best way to
so
do it.
I'm not afraid to just start hitting buttons and see what happens and try things out. Worst comes to worst, you just hit undo. If you mess something up, as long as if you're saving often enough, if you mess up something real bad, you can always just go back to an old save if you have to.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Or the undo or redo.
Yeah. So yeah,
Absolutely.
exactly. So that's why I'm not afraid to do that. So like I said, at some point I will do my own book. I've been working on stuff and I've got stuff going in the background that no one has really seen yet, but like I'm working on it, At the same time,
That's the best way.
at the same time, I'm also working on the site, trying to build up the site. I want people to see these books, and I mean, I reached out to you, and
Yeah.
that's what I do. I just kind of like, stalk Twitter and stuff, and just look for people tweeting about projects. And
Right.
when I see one that looks cool, I'm like, I'll just shoot somebody a DM and be like, hey. What's up?
No, and I'm pretty sure most of the time you will get people who will be like, yeah, all right, let's do it. I'm down with that. Yeah,
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, for the most part, yeah, absolutely. I don't know if I've ever had anyone say no. I don't think I have. The
That'd
only
be
thing
rare. That'd be
yeah,
rare
it would
if
be
that
really
happened.
odd. I don't really
Yeah, can
see
you
a lot.
imagine? Can you imagine? Like, no, I don't want to be interviewed by your
That's right.
magazine.
I don't want your promotion.
Yeah. Can you imagine? That would be terrible. Oh man.
But
That
like
would
I
suck.
haven't, and I've read, but what I have had happen, and I will say this is I've had people that I've reached out to, and they said, "Yeah, absolutely, I'm all for it," and I'll send them questions for an interview, and then they never get back to me.
Ah,
And
yeah.
that I have had happen, and that's rough because I don't take it personally. It's not, it's nothing like that. Like I'm not gonna be mad at somebody for doing that or whatever. Like I just don't understand it. I feel like, dude, I'm giving you a chance to promote yourself.
Right.
Like let's do it.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. Let's do it. Yeah, why not? Like, why? The great thing that I feel like you're doing is that you are building a network. People are gonna appreciate it. Like, I certainly appreciate the fact that you reached out to me to interview me, not only for this campaign, but the campaign back in February. When
yes,
you also had me interview for that. So I was like, okay, that's cool. Like he actually reached out, and that shows that you care and that you want the project to succeed. And but at the time in February, I had no idea what the hell I was doing. I was like, like you say, I wasn't like you just jumped in and started doing it. You weren't afraid to push buttons, and that's exactly what I did when I launched it back in February. I was like, I'm just gonna do it and
right,
learn as I go. And I did. I learned a lot as I went. I was very clear with the mistakes that I made back in February. Zero social media presence, zero YouTube channel. I had a channel, but I really didn't upload anything really on it.
right.
And so when I realized, like, oh crap, like I emailed Richard Meyer. I emailed him asking him for advice, and he told me, yeah, man, you need to build up your social media base, or else who's going to support you? And I was like, damn, okay. So I essentially jumped in cold, essentially,
Right.
but as as the campaign failed, I had to I refunded all the money of the people who did contribute to the campaign, and I just kind of retreated back and okay, assessed all the mistakes I made, and okay, I gotta build up my social media presence. I gotta start my YouTube channel. I have to, make sure that instead of doing the 100-page book, I'll split it into 2 books. That way, I could just focus on the first half that's already complete, and then
Right.
I could focus on the second half later. With as it's being completed. And when I did that, now that I have it here at 1,195 with 60 backers, it's like, okay, it's hard work. Don't get me wrong. It's really
Right.
hard work to hustle and go out there. And I understand why it could be taxing. It really can be taxing because you have to, request people on Twitter who you don't know essentially
Right.
and ask them, hey, can I be on your show? And of course, the worst thing that can happen is they say no, or I'm sorry, man, I'm completely booked. Because
Yeah.
they're a big channel. So you got to start with the small channels, and that's what I did back in February. I started with the big channels and worked my way down. But then I realized, no, I got to start at the bottom and work my way up.
Well, that was,
So
I mean, and that's why I said when you DM'd me before and said, "Oh, I'm on a stream promoting," and I realized you were on John's stream. I
yeah,
was like, "Yeah, dude, no, stay there, dude. I'll
yeah,
be waiting. Just wait, but let me know when you're ready." Like,
yeah. That was um a big help because John Malin has a big channel, has a big
right.
following base. So the fact that he invited me, it was like, okay, great. This is it's the last day of my campaign. So I was like, I gotta do this last push. I gotta get as many as possible. But now that he explained to me that it might benefit me to extend it to an extra 30 days, I might just do that and just do this for another 30 days for
Yeah,
the for the month of February. I mean, not my
I think
February,
that's a good idea.
December.
Yeah,
Yeah, for
I think
December, and then hopefully I could double the what I have now. And if that happens, then that's even better because then the extra money that I do raise will funnel to the production of book 2 and also obviously
right,
to the production of the book and the postage and all that stuff for
right.
the backers.
Right. And honestly, and that's the thing, I think that's a good idea. I think, especially now that you've been on John's channel,
Yeah.
uh, I think because even he said to everybody, come back on before like if you're gonna go another 30, come back on sometime during that 30. We'll get a little bit more of a focused one where it's just
Right. Yeah.
more time, and that's only gonna help because the more times you're in front of people, the more times it reminds them that your book exists, and the more time that it reminds them to go, "Oh, shoot, I wanna back that," you know?
Right. Yeah.
A
You're right.
and I feel like the other thing is too, is when you appear on someone like John's show, you know, other shows, will now know who you are, who maybe didn't know
Right.
who you were before, and they may reach out to you, or if you reach out to them, they'll be more willing to go, "Oh, yeah, I remember, I saw him on John's show. Yeah, absolutely, come on," you know? And so maybe you'll wind up on somebody else's show or a couple of
Yeah.
a few other people's shows, and it just kinda grows and goes from there. I remember I'll never forget, I was doing a live stream one time, and I had a handful of people on, and it was, you know, it was a bunch of us, and we were all just hanging out. I haven't done a live stream in ages, and, it's just been because of life. I just haven't done it,
Right.
but,
Right.
I would like to start doing more of them. I just need to try and figure out what time works for me as, like, kind of a regular time. Because when
Right.
you kinda just do it willy-nilly here and there, like, it doesn't really you kinda have to have a sort of it doesn't have to be as scheduled all the time exactly the same, but it's gotta at least be, like, relatively around
Right.
the same kinda thing. Um, so once I get that settled, then I'll figure that out and I'll do more, but, I remember like I said, I was doing this live stream, and I had a bunch of people on, and one of them was, Sweens, who's the artist for Oddity.
Oh,
Um,
okay. All right. Yeah, I know who that
and
guy is. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and, so he's on my show, and he's hanging out, and we're having a good time, and I had him on before, so I think this was the second time he was on, and we're talking, and we're having a good time, and then all of a sudden, he goes, "Oh," he's like, "I hope you don't mind." He's like, "Ethan just invited me to come on his show." He's like, "Do you mind? Like, I don't want I feel bad." I'm like, "Dude, go."
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Exactly. Exactly.
Why are
Go.
you even asking? Go.
Right.
Like, bro, that is
Absolutely.
the biggest show out there. Like, if he's asking you to come on, just go on the show, man.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, like,
Absolutely.
and it was funny because it was actually really funny because I said to him, like, you know what, go, but if you're gonna go, just shout me out. Mention that you were on
Yeah.
my show or something.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. See,
And he did.
you know
Yeah,
what's up. You know
he
what's up.
did actually, which was cool. He didn't have to do that. I was just saying it as a joke, but he did it.
No, look, the one thing that I think is missing in the indie comic book scene, and I think you'll agree, we need a Wizard magazine. Not Wizard magazine, but
Right.
a Wizard magazine. And when I started collecting comic books, when the story I told you about at 13, the employee who worked at the comic book store, I was asking him all these questions, and he caught on that I was new. He caught on that that was my first time there. And so he recommended here, but he's out here, but I'll give you this copy of Wizard magazine. This magazine is a good starter for you to know what to look for. So I was like, great. So I took it home and I subscribed. The first when I read it, I was like, oh, this is perfect. This is what I want. I need to know what's coming out. I need to know the hype behind what's coming out, who's involved, that kind of thing. So um, I feel like your website, your Zine, your online Zine, as I like to call it, uh, is a good, I don't want to say replacement, but it's a good filler in terms of like the void that's there in terms of letting people know what to look for in the indie comic book scene. And not just Wizard magazine, but there's other magazines that
Sure.
have been out and published throughout the years in the industry, and where people interview creators and talk about their upcoming projects. And I feel that your website is right there where it needs to be. So I'll let you know. I'll tell you right here, right now, man. Whenever you do plug your website, tag me, and I'll be more than happy to retweet you and let people know to check out your website, because I think the more people interacting at your website and are aware of your website, then more than likely you'll have more people flocking your way, so that way they could be promoted on your website. And not just website, but when you are ready to live stream again, you could have guests on your show talk about their books, which would be
Oh, yeah, and
fantastic.
that's definitely part of the plan for sure. One of the other things I'm gonna do is well, first of all, thank you. Uh, like, I don't
Yeah,
wanna be
no, absolutely, man. Yeah.
and that honestly, that was, one of the things I had in mind was, going back to the very, very beginning was we don't have any kind of anything like that.
We
I mean,
don't.
even the mainstream doesn't have it. There is no Wizard magazine anymore,
Yeah, Wizard magazine's gone. Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
so, but I remember, being a kid and reading Wizard. I had a subscription to Wizard magazine. I had a subscription to Hero Illustrated. Um, I used to read those things cover to cover. And like I said, always been a big video game fan too. So I used to read all the video game magazines and all that stuff too. And I just felt like there was a hole that we needed somebody to fill. And I said, no, screw
Right.
it, I'll fill it. And
Yeah.
and that's why, I started out, it was basically a monthly magazine that I had, people would sign up for, and I would send it to the subscribers, the people who signed up. I would email them the new issue first, and then I would post the full issue on the website. And I did that for a year. I did that for a full year now. It was a year back in I believe September was the first. Yeah, September of last year was the first issue. And um I was doing it monthly for a while, and then it got to be a bit too much, especially with work, because I had actually at the time I had gotten a promotion, so I was doing even more work at work. And 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 so then went to like more of a I went to a bi-monthly schedule, and then kind of coming around as I was reaching the 1 year mark, and I'm thinking about, like, we're coming around. I've been doing this for a year now. I felt like the number of subscribers had kind of plateaued for people who were willing to sign up to get it sent to their email address.
Ah,
And so I said, you know what? Let's change tactics. Let's try something new. And then the other thing I felt was, I know a lot of people liked the form factor of the zine being sent to their email address, because I would put it together as if I say so myself, a really pretty looking, what looked like a magazine.
I loved
And
it. I loved it because I signed up to your magazine, your online magazine, and I always looked forward to them because I wanted to know what was upcoming. And so when I saw that they weren't coming anymore, I was like, "Oh crap! I hope I hope he's all right. I hope he hasn't stopped." But go ahead. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you,
well,
but I just
no,
want to let you know that I found that.
yeah, and so like, the idea originally was like, I'll be the Wizard magazine for this indie comic book, groundswell that we see going. But then what I started to figure out, like I said, after a year of doing it and seeing where where the numbers were, and figuring, you know what, rather than having one big, dump of information that comes every 2 months or every month, whatever it was, if I parse it out just day by day as I get these things, it allows me to not only um, have readers, they can read it at their own pace and
Right.
maybe not feel like they're overwhelmed by getting everything all at once. And at the same time, it enabled me to do things where if someone's campaign didn't line up with my publishing schedule for the
All right.
zine, then
Yeah.
it didn't make sense for me to reach out to them, because now it was gonna be, well, their campaign's gonna be over 2 weeks before the new issue comes out, so then that's kinda pointless. So, I figured it just made more sense all around to go with more of the website, like the blog website style, where there's just new posts day after day, and as soon as I get somebody's questions back, I can put it together, throw the artwork in there, and make it look nice, and then boom, post it up on the site. So if somebody gets to me, I mean, I had somebody that I had never even heard of their campaign. It was a campaign for 2 volumes called Seasons, Volume 1 and 2.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I
And
see. I saw it right here. Let me put it up.
I hadn't even heard of it. Um, it was not something I had ever heard of. And then somewhere, again, just on social media or whatever, I saw somebody posted like a link to it or whatever it was, and I was like, "Well, let me check it out. Let me go look at it." And I went and looked at it, and I'm like, "Wow, this looks like really good stuff. Like, more people should know about this. I never even heard about this." But the campaign was only a few days away from closing. I think at the time it was maybe like 6 days away from closing when I first saw it, and I was like, "Oh man, if I was doing this the old way, I would have just had to I would have had to have just let that go."
Right.
Um,
Oh,
but
you're right. Yeah, you're right.
but because of the way I'm doing it now, I was able to shoot him a DM. He got right back to me. I sent him the questions the same day. He got the questions back to me, I think later that night or the next morning. And then the day after that, boom, I just put the article up and it was good to go. And so even if it's only a few days of the campaign left, hey, who knows how many people maybe see it and help him get more backers, get more eyes on his project.
Yeah.
So that was one of the main reasons why I decided to change the way I delivered the information. I just felt like it was a more effective way to do it this way, and we'll see how it goes. I will say, like, just looking at like the traffic numbers on the website, uh, you know, obviously when you're posting something once a month or once every 2 months, the numbers go up for a couple of days and then they drop down to 0 for a while, and then, so
Right.
obviously, like, I can't look at the percentage and go, "Oh, wow, I'm like 287% higher than I was last month." Well, yeah, you know, like, of course. Yeah.
Right.
But that's, it definitely looks like it's headed in the right direction, and so I like the way things are going. So I feel like I made the right decision, and
Yeah, yeah, I think you have too. Now that you explained it, because as I'm looking at it now, I'm like, oh yeah, this is so much better because you could just go to the website and you can scroll down and you can see like, okay, oh, hey, this looks pretty good. And you could click on it, and even if the campaign's over, you could what you're doing can at least help the people gain followers. the creators
Right.
gain followers on their social media, on their Facebook or on their Twitter, whatever, whatever they choose to share their work on. And that's always a good thing, because then they could follow them, they could see what they're doing, and then down the line, if they see that, okay, this guy actually is legit, I'll back him when he does a second campaign, or if the campaign goes on in demand, they can still purchase something on their in demand store, which is great, which also works out for them.
Yeah, and it's funny because there's been some others. I mean, first of all, I put everybody's, whenever I do anything about anyone's book, I always obviously I link the campaign, and then I also always link the person who does the interview. I always link their social media. And the reason I do that is for that exact reason. Because if you come to this, months later and the campaign's already done, and you're like, oh man, but you look at it and you see the artwork and you read the article, like, oh man, that sounded awesome. I'm so pissed I missed that.
Right.
You can still go, you know what though? I'm going to follow this guy and see if he does another campaign.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And so, I think it's definitely, something that's been a cool thing. I think it definitely helps. Just because at least they'll get more followers, and some creators I've noticed have done things where they'll do they'll do their campaign will end, they'll do in demand, whatever, they'll ship, it's over, it's closed. Sometimes they'll still have books left over, and if you just happen to DM them or hit them up on Twitter and say, hey, I missed your campaign, but I really thought the book looked amazing, is there any way I can get it? A lot of those creators out there, they still have other copies sitting around.
Yeah, you're right.
And they'll be more than happy to work something out with you on a personal one-on-one basis. I couldn't call, or send a message on Twitter to, Marvel or DC and say, hey, I missed out that last issue of Squirrel Girl that I really wanted. I tried to pick the most ridiculous example.
Right.
But I couldn't do that. And have them get back to me and say, oh yeah, shoot me, hit me up on PayPal or whatever. Here's my thing, blah, blah. Like, but with individual indie creators, you can do that.
Oh yeah.
And so that's why I feel like even if a campaign's over, at least having their social media link in there gives you something. So that you can, if you want to reach out to them in the future, you can. If you want to just follow them and see what they do, you can do that too. I mean, most people, if they do a second campaign for a second book, they'll have a tier where you can catch up and get the first one too.
Yeah, right.
Which is smart, obviously.
Yeah, it is. It is. It depends. It depends. Because I don't. To be honest with you, I don't plan on doing that. No. Because you know what it is. Let me explain myself so people won't misconstrue what I just said. When I used to collect comic books, I used to love hunting for books that I missed out on, and so I kind of missed that now. And so when I do launch book 2, it's just gonna be book 2, and then maybe I'll do the entire collection in one book as the tier, but not the first book, I guess, by itself is what I'm trying to say.
I gotcha.
That makes sense. So the collected edition, but
right,
the stuff that you see on my campaign now, like this stuff, like this with this issue, not this issue, but this cover or this cover,
right,
it won't be available anymore. It'll just be one collected, book.
Right.
As a tier is
and I think that's fine. I think that makes sense. That's, again, you're giving. The other thing with that is, I will say, and I know a lot of backers like that idea of, well, even if you're gonna go down the road and do a second, where people can do a catch up tier or whatever, change the cover, do something to make it special.
Right. Yeah,
for the first backers.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're right. Absolutely.
I think a lot of people appreciate that.
Do, for sure. Yeah, that's what I plan on doing. I want this to be special because, like I said in Malin's live stream, it's taken me freaking 10 years to get here. And now with the crowdfunding platforms, now I have an opportunity to showcase to people what I have what I have to offer as a writer, because I don't draw. I don't draw at all. I'm a writer. I'm just a strictly a writer. So, however, saying that, that doesn't mean I don't appreciate the art form of
Of
comics.
course.
I do, and it's one of those things that it's like an almost like an envious thing that I have, that I wish I could draw, because if I could draw like this with the image you're seeing right now, if I could draw
Right.
like that, believe me, it would be written and drawn by Julius Freeman. But
Sure, of course.
since I don't draw that, it's like it's hard, because I have to act like the publisher at the same time as a writer. Because in publishers, as you know, that's how it works, right? You hire the writer, you hire the artist, so you have to pay out of pocket to the writer and to the artist to produce the book you want them to produce.
Right.
So in the indie comic book scene, you're that guy, you're that publisher. You got to have the funds to pay the artist to draw the book you want produced. And it's been taxing, I will say.
I'm sure.
But it's all at the same time, it's been fun because I have so much fun creating. That's what I love, creating.
Right.
Like this image here, this was a collaboration. I had this idea in my head. I had this image in my head, like it'd be cool if I have the main character Matt and his sensei, bow it to each other, and then have them kind of like a Frank Quietly type of deal, where you see the different motions of the action.
Right.
Drawn, and that's exactly what this artist did. He that's exactly what he gave me, not at the angle that I had originally thought up, but considering the fact that he took what I wrote down, what I described to him, and the fact that he gave me this was like that. This is what a collaboration is all about. It should be all about anyway.
Well, I mean, honestly, I'll tell you, like that panel of them fighting, starting in the distance and then working their way up towards. That is freaking insane. Like honestly, from an art standpoint, I look at well. First of all, I mean, I'll give you from a couple of different perspectives, because I look at when I read comics and I look at comics, I kind of approach them from a couple of different perspectives. First off, I will read a comic just as a fan, just as a reader. I'm very big into like buying in. If I bought your comic and I'm gonna sit down and read someone's comic, I have already bought in. I'm in.
Right.
Take me for a ride. Like
right.
that's I'm there. I have zero problems with suspension of disbelief or any of that stuff. That's why I'm not one of those nitpicky people. Like if I see a movie and somebody goes like, "Oh, well, this wouldn't really work that way."
Right.
I don't care. Just as long as it was fun and I'm having a good time, I don't care.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
why I hate
me.
those Cinema Sins videos.
Yes, I know, like, some people are like, that's what they like, and that's fine, you do you, but for me, I just wanna have fun. So, when I first look at that panel, the first thing that goes through my mind is, "Damn, that's awesome."
Right. Yeah, exactly.
And then, because I do draw, and I've been working on, like, doing pages myself and everything else, and I know how much I look at that panel and all those figures that he had to draw for that panel.
Yeah.
And I look at that panel and I'm like, that panel alone had to take at least an entire day, maybe more.
It did. Actually, it did. It did. I work, like I said, I work with the artist closely, and talented artist. His name's Afu Chan. I think he's currently drawing an image book with John Layman. Okay. And I wanted him to draw the Ghetto Dragon originally, but his fees were just too high for me at the time.
Gotcha.
And but yeah, ideally he would have been my first pick as artist for the Ghetto Dragon, because I think he captured, I guess, essentially what I had envisioned in my head. It's one of those moments where it was like a revelation when I saw his work. I was like, this is it. This is the guy. This is the guy who needs to draw the Ghetto Dragon. But thankfully, Alan Fletcher, the artist that I'm currently working with now, he got his own. He had his own spin on it, and I have to say that he really did give it a unique flavor that I feel complemented the story that I wrote for No Good Deed. And I did like his. He kind of had like a Kirby-esque type of. He drew his characters almost like a Jack Kirby type of deal. Like you see here, like the strong jaw, the big hands, So it was cool because I'm a huge Jack Kirby fan too. So it was cool to see that I met an artist who was, essentially, I think he's like 20. I think if I remember correctly, he's 26, so he's fairly young.
Yeah.
And the fact that he told me, "Oh yeah, I'm a huge Jack Kirby fan," and it's like, dude, that's perfect. Like that's perfect. Yeah.
And honestly, that's really unusual.
It is very unusual. It is. That's why when he told me that, I was like, dude, wow, I can't believe it. Like you truly are, a freaking student of the game. If you say that Jack Kirby is one of your, one of the artists that inspired you to draw, that's great. Because I think every artist should study Jack Kirby closely because he just understood sequential storytelling. And he was absolutely a grandmaster at it too.
Oh, he was. Listen, he's the Godfather. He's,
yeah,
he's
absolutely, he was.
But yeah, no, like let me, if you don't mind, like I didn't know how long you want to go. I know we're a little over an hour already, but I'm good to keep going.
No, 10 minutes, 10 more minutes, and I have to get off in 10 minutes.
Okay, no problem. Let me just, if you don't mind me picking your brain just a little bit, just about your experience with doing this book. I know, like you said, you've been working on it for over 10 years. And, I know, like for me, like I said, for me, one of my dreams as a kid was always to be a comic book artist. That was always one of my things. And that's why I did, as a kid, I used to make my own comic books. And I'm curious to know, like, because for myself, again, I've loved comics my whole life, and the weird thing was, like, I used to draw every day when I was a kid. I would always drawing. Everywhere I went, I had at least a pencil and a pad or something, and I probably drew too much, which got me, my grades in school sometimes suffered because of that.
That was a good thing, actually.
But I used to, I drew all the time, and then what was really funny was I actually, because of life and getting married and having a child and working full time and everything else that goes along with it, I just stopped. I stopped drawing for a very long time. For a very long time. I would say, when I tried to do the math, I mean, it's hard to really know for certain, but I think I probably stopped drawing for about 20 years. And it's really funny because then my daughter was born, and when she got to be about 5 and started going to kindergarten, one of the things that they had to do, they had to bring a snack every day, and the snack had to come in a brown paper bag. That was just the rule, whatever. So, you had to give them a brown paper bag with their snack in it. So I'd, pack up her goldfish or whatever, and I'd, so what I decided to do was just, I grabbed a Sharpie, and I just was going to write her name on the bag. And I was like, you know what? Let me draw something on here. And I just started drawing, like, characters that she knew on her snack bags. And it was like every day I would just be drawing something else on there. And before I knew it, I was drawing again, and I was having so much fun just doing the snack bags for her. I would draw whatever. I would draw Snoopy on one. I would draw Phineas and Ferb on another one. I would draw,
that's cool,
whatever it was. I would just look up a picture on my phone real quick, grab a Sharpie, and just draw it. And if it came out a little screwy, it didn't matter. She didn't care. She was 5 years old. She thought it was the greatest thing ever. And so I started doing that, and then next thing you know, I just started drawing more in my spare time again, and I kind of got back in the flow of it. And then when I said, you know what, let me start doing this, like, seriously. Let me do some real practice and try to draw some real stuff. And it's so funny as an older, I call myself as an older person. I'm not that old. Listen, back at work, I was like a baby because I worked in a senior home. So everybody there is 80 or 90. It was, so I was like a baby to them. But but like getting a little more serious about it and actually busting out my old copy of How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way and everything else, and just practicing and suddenly finding myself getting back in the flow, and then jumping in, like, the quality of my art so quickly. I think just because, like, as an adult, I have the patience to actually do it the right way, Whereas as a kid, you don't want to bother like building your figure and go. You just want to just draw the finished product. I just want to draw cool superheroes. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
So I'm wondering, like, for you, I know for your journey, it's different as a writer. You know, did you ever like drop out of it and come back when you had the artists coming and going and trying to figure out did you ever kind of like think to yourself, you know what, maybe this just isn't going to happen or anything like that?
I did think like that at one point, a few points actually, but I never stopped. I never stopped because I knew the moment I stopped, I would probably first end up regretting it. Second, I'm kind of somewhat a manic person, so I knew I would get depressed. I knew it would depress me because growing up, I was always an imaginative child. When I used to walk to school, it used to be a half-hour walks to school.
Okay.
And so the times when I used to walk with my friends would either, not want to walk as early to school as I did, or because they ditched, let's be real. Sometimes they would ditch. And when I would walk alone to school or home from school, I would always come up with these ideas. So as I got older and I really got into novels and of course comic books, and then I started just writing ideas. And I actually can draw somewhat good. I actually pulled up a few pages that I laid out for an artist, but it never got done because he didn't like the content of the story. But I'm going to show it to you guys now. So, so what I learned to do is I learned to draw pretty good. And so whenever the artist would leave for whatever reason, it wasn't because they got tired of the project or anything like that. It was more because of circumstances of life. They had their things and I understood.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so that little voice in my head kept telling me, don't stop, keep going, meaning keep writing, keep producing stories. Because I have produced stories outside the Ghetto Dragon. I have a sci-fi, fantasy story that I want to tell. I have a political crime thriller that I want to produce. I have another sci-fi kind of like with cyborgs. Like I have all these stories that I want to produce, but I have to focus on one at a time. So that way I can have the opportunity to produce the other stories, hopefully down the line.
Right.
And so, no, I never stopped. Because I know myself. I know the moment I did stop, I would be miserable. I would. And there was times where I would stop writing for a while, like a week, and I'd be, short-tempered, really hot-tempered, short.
Right.
My wife would notice it, and then I realized maybe it's because I haven't written anything. And when I mean write anything, I'm not just talking about creating stories. I like to journal. I like to write out my thoughts as to what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling, what's going on in the world, that kind of stuff. And so I would sit down and write. And after I wrote for like an hour, I would write for an hour straight, just focus on my journal. I like to handwrite, and so when I would do that, yeah, and I finish, I feel better. Wow, I feel so much better. And then a lot of the time when I'm just writing raw thoughts, like just raw, like there's no cohesion. It's just a stream of consciousness type of deal. Sometimes I do get ideas from that, where I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. I could do, because I'm always working on multiple stories at the same time. Working on a little bit here, and then the other day work on a little bit there, and then the other day work on this project here. And so there's days when I do where I get stuck on one story and I kind of step away from it. Okay, I'm just gonna step away from that one and focus on this one. Then a few days later, I'm like, oh, I got it. I got it. And then I go back and I continue on writing for that story. So no, man, I always kept going. I never stopped. The Ghetto Dragon was always a story that the Ghetto Dragon is already, believe it or not, it's written. It's written completely.
Mm-hmm.
Book 1, book 2, book 3, book 4, and book 5 are already written out in a Marvel method style, where I write down exactly what happens, but not the scripts. Don't get it. Don't get it.
Yeah. I got
just the summaries. So it's all written now and laid out. It's just waiting for it. It's just waiting to be produced. So book one is essentially my uh, independent movie, the indie movie, the one
Sure.
that I scraped all the cents and dimes to, work really hard to get this one done. And I'm hoping that, book two and book three will be the sequels, the beefed up sequels, where I
Right.
have a bit more of a budget
This
and
is
I
your El
could.
Mariachi.
Exactly. You get it right in the head, buddy. That's exactly right. This is my El Mariachi, and I'm hoping that book two is my Desperado. And I could move on from and I could go to bigger and better places in the future, hopefully down the line. So yeah, man, I couldn't do it. I couldn't stop. And so I'm glad that I didn't stop, because the last time when I had the thought of like, okay, maybe I shouldn't, like you just said, I'm not cut out for this stuff, this comic book stuff, because no one's really knows who I am. No one cares who I am.
Right.
But my wife, God bless her, told me, you're going to regret it. You're going to regret it. And I know if you stop, you're going to regret it, because she told me the example of like, haven't you ever heard the saying that if, when you work so hard and so long on something and then you decide to stop, you were just like a few steps away from making it. I don't know if you ever heard that saying or not.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, don't do that, because that's exactly what's going to happen. You're going to stop, and then you're going to realize, damn, if I had just waited a few more months, I would have made it, So I kept with that. I just kept going, kind of like a marathon. I just decided, okay, it's not a track, like a fast, sprint.
Yeah, it's not a sprint. Yeah.
It's a marathon. Just jog there. Don't sprint there, jog. So now that I have that mentality, that's why now I had, the success I had with the Ghetto Dragon campaign.
Right.
Because I jogged there.
It's funny because, like you said, I had reached out to you back during the first campaign, and I remember,
right.
I remember distinctly. I remember seeing you tweet afterwards when the campaign came down, saying like, the Ghetto Dragon is not done. I'm not done. I'm just gonna gather and figure it out and go from there. And I remember seeing that, and I remember being really happy to see that, because first of all, like I said, I'm an eternal optimist, and I also like to see other people succeed. I know some people get jealous of other people's success, or when other people have that is, and I know it's going to sound like I'm tooting my own horn. I'm not trying to, but I don't. I never have been that way. I don't get jealous of other people's success. It makes me happy, and especially when I see people who I know I can, people I can relate to, who are trying to do something creative. And honestly, everything in the world, everything in your life will tell you that you shouldn't bother, that it's not worth it, that you will never make a living doing it. It's not worth doing, yada, yada, yada. I mean, there's so much negativity, especially when it comes to being creative and trying to do something creative. It's constant, and you'll get it from everywhere. And it's not necessarily people who are trying to be negative, or people who are trying to bring you down or hurt you. It's even people who feel like they're looking out for you and feel like they're trying to give you advice to help you. They'll tell you things like, well, maybe you should try something new, or maybe do you have a backup plan? Do you have a fallback? And there's all these things, and it's funny because you can and you can have a backup plan, and there's a lot of people who do this stuff. They have a full-time job, they have a family, and then they're doing this too, because it's that important to them. And so when I see people doing this and being successful, and it makes me happy to see these other people succeeding, and it just makes me feel like, when it's my time, I can succeed too. And
absolutely.
And I feel like it's the coolest thing. It really is. And it's one of the things I really love about this whole indie comic scene that we have now, as opposed to, I mean, I don't know, I can't really speak directly to how it was, back in the 80s or the late 80s, early 90s, when people like Eastman and Laird were launching Ninja Turtles for the first time. I don't know what other creators were telling them. I don't know if they were even speaking to any other creators at the time. Only they could tell you that. But I see it now, and I see, so many creators trying to help other creators, and it is the coolest thing to see. Like,
It
it
is.
it's just
It really
cool.
is.
It's just cool people helping one another. Everybody has this cool idea. They love comics. Comics is awesome. Everybody wants comics to be cool again. And unfortunately, all the people who want comics to succeed and to be cool are not the people working at the big publishers. It's
Right.
everybody else.
Right.
So it's like we have to take it upon ourselves. We have to join together, and we got to support one another and help each other, and it will grow. And it's just a cool thing, and it's really cool. And that's why, like I said, when I saw your tweet about, it's not done, I'm not finished, I'm coming back, and
Yeah.
I've seen other people do the same thing. I mean, to give a shout out to Bric-a-Brac #2, Ryan Hawk. um this guy, I have seen this guy kill himself to get these books funded. His first bric-a-brac, he went through, I think, 4 campaigns before he finally got it funded. And
Oof.
that, and yeah, and that dude
Dang.
hustled and worked so
Good for
hard
him.
to get
Good
that
for
book
him.
funded. And I
Yeah.
got it, and it's a great book. It's a fantastic book. And now he's going through the same thing with Bric-a-Brac 2. And I get it, it's a niche thing, it's a Christmas story, it's an all ages
Right.
story. And I know a lot of all ages stories do tend to struggle to find funding. That's another topic for another day. Maybe we could get
Yeah.
together and talk about that sometime.
Yeah. Heck yeah. Yeah, I'll be down
Like,
with that. Of
that
course.
would definitely be cool. But I would love to see him succeed, because I've seen this guy just out there trying and trying, and it makes me want to try even harder to help him. But there's only so
Yeah.
much I can do.
Maybe he's just hitting up the wrong demographic. Maybe he needs to go to a different if it's an all ages book, Christmas, maybe gosh, he could probably go to like I wouldn't even know where to start, but
I know it's hard.
I would imagine that's something that you would want to target parents who want
Yes.
their kids to read, so he would have to find like maybe parents groups or something like that, and pitch them like, hey, I got this crowdfunding campaign, this book, it's a Christmas story, it's all ages, children can read it, and parents will probably more likely say, oh, okay, this is pretty good, and then he just has to go out. I think he has to think outside the box, because
Yeah, no,
I
I
think
agree.
the people, because I think he was on. I saw him on another stream I was in. I can't remember which stream was it. It was, but uh, the demographic that we have now, they're looking for cool, kind of edgy
Right.
books, because they don't, Marvel and DC no longer produces those books, and that's where all the fans were at. They were looking for that kind of stuff, and so I think with all ages, he would have to, of course, hit the demographic here, but he would have to go outside this demographic, so that way his campaigns will be a lot more successful. I think
Right. And
that's what he needs to do.
I think that's something a lot of the all ages ones are struggling with.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
I've seen, because I mean, I get it. A lot of people in our age range, we have kids. And
yeah.
so, it is possible that we might, that some of us would back an all ages book to give it to our kids, or even, I mean, I
Yeah.
read it myself and it was a good book, but, but,
Right.
but like, I get it. Like, not
I
everybody's
think I think kids would benefit more with that, because then if the kids like the story, then they could tell their parents, "Hey, is there another one?
right.
Is there going to be another one that comes out?" And then the parents can keep in touch with the creator. They could follow him on Facebook. I think Facebook is probably his best bet. I hope he's on Facebook, because
Yeah, I don't know. I know he's on Twitter, and that's where I
yeah,
interact with him, but I don't know. I know it's like that audience is probably more of a Facebook audience than a Twitter
yeah,
audience.
I think so. I think so, because more parents are on Facebook than on Twitter.
Right.
And well, there you go. If you interact with them, hey, throw him the free 2 cents that I gave you, so that way he could. I mean, because I want to see success as well. I want to see people succeed, and if he has a book that he's struggling with to sell, as an all ages book, then I think Facebook is probably the best bet for him to succeed in his campaign on Facebook.
Yeah, I think you're probably right with that.
All right,
It's funny,
so
I know you got to go just real quick.
yeah,
I see ID Crisis wrote he's reading TMNT
yeah,
right now, and he said very inspiring. And it's funny that he mentioned that, because it just reminded me when I was, God, I don't even know. I think I might have been in junior high. Um, Oh, is that your layout?
Yeah, it's my layout, but go ahead, tell your story, and then I'll end
Oh,
it with the layout.
I think when I was in junior high, I think it was junior high. I had to write a paper about something. I don't even remember. It was so long ago. I'm so old. Um, I joke about that all the time. My daughter yells at me. She's like, "You're not old." Uh, um, but I had to write a paper about something, and it had to do with something like inspiring or whatever. And I literally wrote my paper about Eastman and Laird creating the Ninja Turtles.
Oh, cool. Hey, that's something. That's something. Better than
So it is
nothing.
inspiring.
Yeah, it is inspiring. It really is, because those two guys came from nothing, and
Right.
they created these characters that are now, I mean, one of the biggest phenomenon, one of the most successful IPs outside of Marvel and DC that to come in a long time.
Oh
I mean,
yeah.
that was talk about a lightning in the bottle. I mean, that
Oh,
was definitely a
absolutely.
lightning in the bottle. Like that was just amazing how the amount of luck these guys had when they just released this, book about four turtles who are ninjas,
I know.
teenage age, as
Yeah.
that was insane, but it worked. It worked
Yeah.
because
When
they
you
probably
really
had. Go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say when you really stop and think about it, like the concept is just ridiculous. Like how
Yeah.
this game, like this giant
Yeah.
property that is still around to this day,
Yeah.
you
To
know,
this
like
day.
I literally my birthday is in March and this past March was the 30th anniversary of the 1990 live action Ninja Turtles movie.
That's right.
And
That's
which first
right.
of all is just ridiculous that it's been 30 years.
Yeah.
Um
Wow.
but I remember it was so funny. They did I know, like, Kevin Eastman did a watch along and stuff, but,
Wow.
they did a whole like, they did a thing where they got the cast back together, and they did, like, reading of from the
Oh, that's
script and
cool.
stuff. It was really neat. It was really cool, but it was so funny because I literally said the one thing I wanted for my birthday, because my birthday's in March, I said, "The only thing I want for my birthday is to sit down with my daughter her birthday's 2 days before me, and she turned 14, and I said, "The one thing I wanna do for my birthday is sit down and watch the 1990 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie with my daughter, and that's all I want for my birthday." And we did, and it was fun, and she actually really enjoyed it.
That's cool. It's a classic. It still holds up.
It does.
It still holds up. It hasn't aged. When I watched it again the other day, I was like, wow, this movie still works. It
It's so
still works.
it's so good. It's like a
Yeah,
good martial arts movie.
it is. It really is. They did a great job bringing them to the big screen. They really did, and that's not easy doing four Ninja Turtles
No,
on the live action.
definitely not.
All right, well, dude, it was great talking to you, man. It was fantastic. We got to do this again. We gotta,
Yeah, absolutely.
we gotta. I think we could do like a live version, like of talking about other people's projects, even, or even talk about the shifting landscape of the indie comic book scene, and well, there's a freaking well of topics we could talk about.
Oh, absolutely.
So Curious Comics, what up, fellas? Out and about. We'll catch the replay. Awesome, Curious. Thanks for joining us. Hopefully you enjoy the replay when you do watch it. So yeah, in the end, I just want to show you the my layouts. So what I do is, when you asked me about, if I stopped or not, what I did was I just decided, you know what, I need to learn how to lay out panels, so that way when I do write scripts, it'll be easier for me to describe what I want if I draw it out first, and then based on what I draw, describe it in words, and then send it to the artist. And I realized that technique does work for me very well, because a lot of the time, it's rare when I get artists who I do work with say, "Hey, I understand this what you wanted in this panel."
Right.
They have a clear picture. So, yeah, I start off with obviously the establishing shot of the character entering the church, and then we have the interior of a room, and it's a priest. A nun brings in these two altar boys. They enter in his room. He locks the door. And why isn't this working? I hate when it does this. Oh God. Okay, hold on. And then the next page is the shadow coming up, and then
Mhm.
the character gets the nun, and then it's a black panel, and then there's a silhouette. So it's a light here in the silhouette,
Right.
and then he throws the nun in there and closes the door and slams it. So that's it. That's a little preview of how I do it. So I lay out the panels. I don't really. I'm not strict in terms of what the artist should draw. That's just more my blueprint. So I will
Right.
say, okay, panel 1, this, panel 2, this, panel 3, this, panel 4, that, and then 5, 6, 7, and then I let them decide how they want to lay it out. And then based on how they lay it out, I either say, oh yeah, that's great, fantastic, let's move on, or I edit some stuff in the case that there's no flow. As you can see, I like the flow. I like to make sure
Right.
everything flows and moves. I'm a huge Alan Moore fan, and I've always loved the way he was able to showcase movement in comics, and that's what I was emulating here with this sequence, where
You know,
everything's just in constant motion.
you know what would be fun would be to see these like even as like a bonus or something for a campaign, to see like your layouts as opposed to the final pages when they're done, like side by side. Like
That'd be cool. That'd be
that would
kind of
be pretty.
cool.
That would be kind of cool just to see, like, or even maybe like a script page, then the layout, your layout page, and then the final page.
I that's a good idea, but the reason why I hold off, I'm showing you this page because the artist who was going to draw it backed out because he didn't like the content. He thought the content was too dark. So I put it off to the side. I hope to one day make this project, because this project is freaking, it's heavy. It's a really heavy subject matter. It deals with
Okay.
obviously the situation with the Catholic priest and pedophilia.
Right.
So
So it's a feel good story.
it's a it's for the family, you know. But I don't want to do that because I don't want to kind of I guess I don't want to like take away the artist's thunder, if that makes
I
sense.
get what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want people to think, oh, so you just follow your layouts. That's what the artist did. No, I stay away from that. I don't let people know. I don't do it for all the projects. Like for instance, Ghetto Dragon, I did it at the beginning, but the
Mhm.
moment Alan Fletcher, because Alan Fletcher, this was his first comic book. He's never really drawn a comic book completely, just a few short stories. So
Right.
in the beginning, he was still learning, but at like maybe I want to say by like page 20, that's when he found his stride, and I no longer needed to draw any panels. I just
Gotcha.
wrote the script, and he just knew exactly what I wanted, because he at that point he and I already found a groove, I guess, in
Right.
terms of how we want the comic book to look like. So yeah, I just want to show you that, so that way you can see that I do take my job seriously as a comic book storyteller. I'm not just a writer, who you know trying to get a quick buck. No, I do love making comics. They're my passion. I feel that the medium is very underrated, and that it doesn't get enough credit that it deserves. The actual medium of
Yes.
comic book storytelling.
Yeah. No,
So
I agree.
and we could talk about that too in the future episode. But I do have to get off now because my wife is texting me saying, when are you gonna when are you gonna end the stream? That's why I gotta
Tell,
go.
tell her it's my fault. I kept you on longer than you planned, and I'm sorry.
She's not gonna believe that, because she knows I can go on and on and on. So Jam Creates. Do you want me to just continue calling you Jam Creates, or you want me to call you by your real name? Because I know some people prefer their handle name. You let me
I
know.
think I think just use Jam or Jam Creates, just because it
All right,
makes it
cool.
easier for people to
All
find
right.
me.
All right, Jam. Well, I will. I think I put your Twitter handle on the description. If not, I'll add it after it gets uploaded to my channel. I'll make sure to add that so that people can find you on Twitter. You can find Jam Creates on Twitter, guys. You should give him a follow. Support him because he is doing what Wizard did years ago, but he's doing it in today's time, and he's making sure that the indie comic book creators are getting the love and support that they deserve, because we are living in a shift. A shift is occurring, and the future is indie. Corporate comics are they're dead. They're dying. They're dead. if any indication, you already saw what's happening at DC with the layoffs, and then now the rumored, the cancellation of Marvel books, which is pretty much indication that they're going to cut down on their output of comics. So now, if you want to get good comic books, now's the time to jump ship and join us in this magical place called the indie comic book landscape.
Or as I like to call it, Indie Comics Underground.
Indie Comics Underground, where the place, it's like that scene from Titanic, right? When DiCaprio tells Kate Winslet, "You want to come to a real party?" This is where it's at, guys. It's at that bottom. It's at that bottom level of the Titanic, where the real party is going on. So hopefully you join us. And yes, there is some drama in the landscape, but that's given. That's given anywhere you go to, because human behavior is human behavior. But if you just kind of, go work around that, you can find some great people in the indie comic book scene. And so thank you for joining me, dude. We'll do this again for sure.
Absolutely. I would love to. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Is there anything else you would like to say before we go? Any last departing words?
Nope, that was it. Just visit www.indiecomics.underground.com. That's where you can find all that stuff. And I'm at jam_creates on Twitter, on Instagram. I think I'm even jam_creates on Parler. I'm like on every social media thing just because I want to get the name. Just to make sure.
It's all about the hustle. It's all about the hustle. All right, guys. We'll see you. I'll see you on Wednesday when I do a little live stream. I'm gonna have a guest on. I'm gonna see if I could try to get this guest, but it looks like I may not be able to because he's booked. He might be booked, so I might try to find someone else, or if not, I might just upload a regular video depending on the situation. So hopefully, you guys will see me. You see me then, and enjoy the rest of your weekend, and stay safe. Be excellent to each other, and party on, dudes.